Hi everybody, happy Thursday. I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps, and this is Lunchtime Live, episode 77. So for those of you who are new here, Lunchtime Live is basically my video newsletter for Stitches and Scraps. So I'll be telling you everything that's going on the blog and what's coming up and all of that. And then we end with a short demo. So I want to make sure sound is coming through. Yes, I think it is. If you can't hear me, let me know. But so this year, what I've decided to do is every week I'm doing a stitch of the week instead of a technique. I'm just choosing a different stitch, and I'm alternating between knit stitches and crochet stitches. So this week's stitch of the week is the crochet linen stitch. You guys can't see that real well. Let me switch over. There we go. So this week's stitch of the week is the crochet linen stitch, which is a really easy stitch to work, but you do have a couple of options in dealing with the edges. So that's what I'll talk about when we get to that. But meanwhile, let me tell you what's going on new at the blog. So I screwed up a little bit. My pattern for the Cozy at Home Crochet Along from Crochet Along Central, my pattern was supposed to come out on next Monday, this coming Monday. But I screwed it up on my calendar and I put it out this past Monday. So it's up, but technically it's next week's pattern. And that is this textured stripes pillow. So it has stripes of basically half double crochet and a textured stitch. And the cool part about this pillow, hi Beth, good to see you. The cool part about this pillow is I wrote it up as a really simple basic pattern. So you can use whatever seams you want and all of that. Hi Wanda, what's the weather like in Florida? It's freezing out here. We're having like a couple days that are warm and then it's going to get really cold again, I hear. Thanks, Beth. You like the pillow? Okay. So what I was saying was, for mine, so I made it basic and I just said seam it, all of that. So you can, if you're a new crocheter, you can still do this pillow. But for mine, I used a different kind of seam to make, so this is all crocheted in a rectangle, and I seamed the top and the bottom together using a grafting technique where basically you work your last row of stitches into the bottom of your first row of stitches so that it ends up looking like it's just a seamless crocheted tube, like you can't tell where the change is. And I did a tube like that, and then I used a seamless mattress stitch seam for the side, an invisible mattress stitch seam for the side. So I've got invisible seams all around it, and I put out a tutorial for grafting this week to go along with this. But I haven't put out the tutorial for the mattress stitch seam yet, which I'll do this coming week. So that is one pattern. The other thing that came out, and actually I'm going to pause. Wanda, that sounds amazing. We used to go, me and my husband, my in-laws had a timeshare on St. Pete's Beach. And we used to go there. We went there probably 4 or 5 times, but we'd go there for a week and it was always in February. So when we hit this weather, I start to think about the beach and I'm like, oh man, I want to go. But, anyway, amazing weather out there this time of year, but I wouldn't want to be there in the summer. Okay, so the other thing on the blog this week is, again, we're going back to our bag along, our crochet along for the year. So far, we posted the pattern a few weeks ago, and then we posted the how to do the surface crochet over your color changes, which is, let me find the right one, I think is this one here. Of course it's felted so you can't see it as well, but then this week I posted how to fold and seam the bag. So that is the second tutorial for this. There is one more tutorial coming out, which is how to do the surface crochet over the seams. And I've got that one coming out next week. So 2 tutorials for next week. The other thing I've been working on, and this is not even crochet related, this is just fun. These are my favorite jeans, absolutely my favorite pair of jeans. I wear them everywhere, and they are so old that the fabric is like starting to dissolve almost. It's just coming apart. You can see it here. There's like no fabric there. So this little tear was the first tear that happened, and I ran it through my sewing machine with some zigzag stitch and some interfacing on the back, and it worked, and it never tore there again. It just tore everywhere else underneath it. So I decided I was going to put another patch of interfacing and then a patch of, I've got some leftover fabric from a sewing project. I'm not a very good sewer, you guys, so this is like huge for me to have done this, but let's see. There we go, some leftover fabric from a sewing project. So I put that in there, and then it's only held in place by the embroidery, and there's this tiny row of running stitches around the outside. So I just use this to practice some embroidery, and I've got like lazy daisies, and this is, I think it's called fishtail stitch. So yeah, fun. I'm going to use this pair of pants as my embroidery practice for like until they fall apart and they're just not wearable anymore. This is how weak this fabric is, right? When I put this into an embroidery hoop, it tore it here. Just the act of putting it in an embroidery hoop tore that. Anyway, that is some fun that I've been having in the background this week. Yesterday I kind of just took the day off, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to fix my jeans because the holes are getting ridiculous. So that is what I did yesterday. Now I think we are on to what's new for next week. So I already told you 2 tutorials. I'm not going to have a new pattern next week because I did extra stuff this week. This pattern was supposed to be next week's, but 2 tutorials, one for the mattress stitch seams on this pillow and one for the surface crochet over the seams on the bag. So with that, let's jump into linen stitch, and I'm going to talk at you about it a little bit before we actually start crocheting. Looks very nice. Like I say to my granddaughter, practice. Yes, I definitely, I think I've got a whole pair of jeans worth of practice happening on this one before I'm done. So hopefully my stitches will get better because I know they're not that great. Okay, so let's look at linen stitch. So I want to start, forget all the rest of this for right now. I want to start with the basic gist of linen stitch. So when we're halfway through a row, when we're in the middle of a row, not worrying about the edges, the repeat for linen stitch is very simple. You chain one and you skip over the stitch, okay? And then you single crochet into the space, the chain one space from the last row, like the one we just made here. Okay, then you chain one, skip over the stitch, single crochet in the chain one space. Chain one, skip over the stitch, single crochet in the chain one space. So that's very easy, and it makes this really nice, airy, kind of flat fabric. Like this is a very thin fabric that drapes really well. But the tricky part about linen stitch is what you're going to do with the edges, and that's where you get a lot of options. So let's look here if I have an even stitch count. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, okay? If I start my row 1 and I go single crochet, because it's hard to start with a chain space, right? So single crochet, chain space, single crochet, chain space, single crochet, then I have 1 stitch left. You can't really end very well with a chain space. There's ways you can mimic it, but it's not easy, right? So you end with an extra single crochet. You just put an extra single crochet in that space now, or in that spot. Now when you do the next row, you do the same thing you did here, right? You start with single crochet, then you skip this one with a chain space over it, single crochet into the chain space, skip this one, single crochet into the chain space, so on and so forth. And when you get to the end of the row, you put an extra single crochet at the end. That's the most typical way that I've seen this done. It's fairly straightforward. Here's my problem with it. Notice that everywhere in the rest of the pattern, you're alternating in your columns between single crochets and chain spaces. These single crochets are worked into the chain spaces, which makes them sit just that hair lower than a single crochet that's worked into the top of a single crochet, right? Well, those little hairs start to add up. If you do this, your side edges will always be single crochet into single crochet. They will look different than the rest of your fabric. They're going to stand out. They're going to be a little bit more wrinkly, and you'll see them. Okay, so on this piece, this edge here, well, wait, let me double check before I say something wrong. Actually, I want to say it's this edge here. This edge here, I've worked single crochets. Okay, so each row there's a single crochet into the single crochet. This edge here, I did something a little different. Let me double check. No, wait, hang on. You know what? The best way for me to check this is going to be to rip this out and see what I actually did. Okay, so I was right. This is the edge where I did single crochet at the edge. Okay. So you can see that it looks a little bubbly and it's a little bit different. Obviously it's not greatly different, otherwise I would have been able to notice it right away. But you can see that it's got almost like if you knit, you know how sometimes you can do a garter stitch selvage that has a little bubble at the end, that it kind of looks like that, right? Totally fine if that's the look you're going for. There's an alternative way that gives you a little flatter of a look at the edge, and that is by starting with a chain space. So normally when you start a row like this one, you chain up, like here's your chains that you started, or here's your other row down here, and you chain up one to get to the height of your stitch. Then you start working your single crochet and you go on so forth, right? Well, what if instead of working a single crochet into that first stitch, we chained one to get up to the height, and then we chain one for a chain one space, and then we start our pattern, right? Well, that shifts it over, because now here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we started with a chain space, we end with a single crochet. And this makes it still a one row repeat, because you're going chain space, single crochet, chain space, single crochet, chain space, single crochet, and then on the next row, chain space, single crochet, like it keeps going. Now, all of your single crochets are worked into chain spaces. So I prefer this one. That's why I put a star in it. I prefer to work linen stitch over an even number of stitches and start with this chain space. The difference in the edge is slight, but it is there. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit more and you'll see, okay, this is my bulkier edge where I did single crochets, and this is my smoother edge where I did chain spaces. And what you do is you work the stitch into the chain space, or into that chain two, as though it was a chain space. So let's do this whole row and I'll show you that. So on this side, I had done it this way on this edge, so I'm going to keep it going. So ignore that. Okay, so when I come to the end of the row on this one, and I'm just doing chain one and then single crochet in each chain space, I want to get to the end of the row and show you. So when we get to the end of the row there, I'm working my single crochet into the last chain space. Now, well, the last chain space in the middle here. I chain one and I skip this single crochet. And now what I have here is the two chains from my starting chain space. So I'm going to go under that chain. Do you see if I wiggle a little bit, you can see it actually opens up into a space. So I go under that chain entirely, just like that. That's a chain space. I work my last single crochet. Now when I start the row, I go chain one to get to the height, turn my work, do another chain for my chain space, skip this single crochet in the next chain space. So it's easier to start a row with a chain space than to end a row with a chain space, and that is the method that I prefer. I just feel like this edge feels flatter and more similar to the rest of the work than this edge that does. This edge looks like an edging. Okay, so, you know, depending on which look you want. Now, it gets even more fun when we get into odd numbers. Odd numbers, you can't do a repeat where it's the same row over and over because you have to adjust for that extra stitch. So on the first row, it seems like it's going to be super easy, right? Because you have an odd number. So you go single crochet chain, single crochet chain, single crochet chain, and you end with a single crochet. And that looks perfect. Perfectly even, great, right? Yeah, until you get to the next row and you're like, wait, I'm starting with a single crochet. So what do? Do I do a chain space and skip this single crochet, or do I do a single crochet into it? Well, let's start with this method where we do a single crochet into it, right? So you do this extra side edge single crochet, and then you single crochet into the chain space. So you've got the 2 single crochets here. Then you do your chain, you know, you get to the end, and then when you've done this last chain space, you have one more single crochet. So you got to do a single crochet in there. So on this one, the odd numbered rows will be this repeat, and the even numbered rows will start and end with an extra single crochet. Now in this case I preferred having the chain space at the end, right? But in this case I prefer this method because both ends look the same in this method. The other option was to start that row with a chain space like we did up here, right? But if you start that row with a chain space, when you get to the end of the row, you still have to end it with a single crochet. And now you get like, and then we do the third row. So you start the row with a chain space, and then you would do, sorry, you can't start the row with a chain space because you get to the third row and you repeat this. So you do, the third row looks like this. And notice that on this side, we have all single crochets, and on this side, we're alternating. Single crochet, chain, single crochet. So I don't like this method on this one, on the odd numbered ones, because it makes your sides look different. So let's try this method on an odd number of stitches, and I'm going to show you from the beginning how to do linen stitch from a starting chain. So I have here, I think I have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to put a line here so you know that that's the other one. Okay. So let's do 7 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you guys know I don't start with a slip stitch, I just start with a chain. And then I need one more chain for that turning chain. So that was 7, this is 8. Now I'm going to do, for this row, single crochet, chain, all the way across, ending with a single crochet. So I skip that first one, that's the turning chain, and I go single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, right, and then single crochet. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. Chain 1, sorry, I dropped my yarn ball, skip 1, and then the last stitch here is a single crochet. Okay, so that was the nice, easy, everything makes sense first row. Now let's go to the second row. We chain 1 and we turn, and we're 1 stitch away from the chain space here, right? Now I'm not going to do that extra chain. I'm going to go ahead and single crochet into this chain space, or into this stitch. Then I start my pattern. Single crochet in the chain space, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the chain space. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet into the chain space, chain 1, skip 1, and then I'm left with that last single crochet at the end, so I single crochet into my last stitch. And then when I turn, sorry, that was wrong. I did that wrong. Yeah, I only have 1 here. I single crocheted in my turning chain, sorry. So there's my 2 from there, right? Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and then there's 2 single crochets. So I single crocheted into this chain space, and then I've got just 1 single crochet left here, so I'm not going to do a chain, I'm going to single crochet into it. Okay, let's do this row. Let's do both these rows one more time. So on this row, I start with a single crochet, and the next stitch I'm looking at here is a single crochet. So I can chain one and skip that. So chain one, skip that, single crochet. Keep doing that across to the end. Chain one, skip one. I have one more stitch after that one that I'm skipping, so I just single crochet into that. Okay. Now this is the complicated row where we start with a single crochet for the edge stitch, and then we single crochet in the first chain and start our repeat of chain one, skip one, single crochet, skip one, single crochet, and then we get to the end and we only have one stitch left, so we single crochet into that one. And that's how I would do linen stitch over an odd number of stitches. But my preference, if I have a choice, and usually in a project, if you're designing something, usually you're going to have the choice to have an odd number or an even number. You can almost always stick an increase or a decrease somewhere to get that one extra stitch that you need. Even if it's just, you know, make a chain but don't skip anything just to add that one stitch. So if you want an even number, you can almost always get it. And I almost always will prefer an even number with this method here of doing the chain space at the starting edge on each row. But again, you know, how you treat the edges is up to you. Maybe you want a decorative edge that looks a little puffier than the rest of the stitches. Or maybe you're sewing into it later, so you want an edge that has easy rows to pick up. Always adjust for whatever you're doing. Hope that makes sense. If anybody has any questions, hi Nancy, it's good to see you. I think you caught us at the tail end here though. But you can definitely rewatch it. And again, I want to tell you that if you're new here, anything that I mentioned in the video, I think I actually forgot to say this time. Any of the things I mentioned in the video, this pillow pattern, the bag pattern, all of that stuff, well, not the jeans, but all the rest of the stuff. If you want to see the patterns or the tutorials that I'm talking about, the links are on a blog post, okay? And you can find that blog post in the description on this video. So go in the description on this video and there's a link there. Click on that and it'll take you to a post about Lunchtime Live, tell you what we're doing, all of that stuff. It'll have a link to this video, all of that. And then right at the bottom, it has, here's the stuff we're talking about today. And you can click on any of that to get to the patterns and stuff. And that's everything. Did anybody, I know Nancy, but next time you'll catch me next time. I'll see you next Thursday at 11:30 Central. But does anybody have questions on the linen stitch and the different edge variations I was talking about? Any of that? You can also email me or find me on any of the social media except Twitter. I don't do Twitter. But I have an account, I just don't do it. But you can find me on Instagram or Facebook are the two that I'm on most of the time, and Ravelry, of course. And just shoot me a message if you have any questions, or bring them next week and I'll answer them. Okay, I'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Bye.